Direct Golf TV, dedicated to improving your game.
Welcome to part 3 of our Perfect Swing series. So you'll have already watched the grip, then we had the stance alignment and posture. Now today's going to be all about the golf swing and how that works, but more importantly how we can apply that to the golf course and how you in particular can understand about the strike. So what's the biggest inconsistency with amateur golfers? Now my first answer to that question is always the strike. So most people think it's a slice, but I actually think it's the strike of the golf ball, especially with the irons. So what I want to try to explain to you is how to control the low point of your arc. Now if you imagine the golf swing as I set up here as a circle going around me, so that's an arc. So what we're trying to do to strike the golf ball is control the low point of that arc. Now so many golfers that I see start moving off the golf ball, and therefore that circle is going to shift. So as I take my backswing here, my circle has then shifted off the golf ball. So if I was to stay there, the low point of my arc now is behind the ball. So I'm either going to hit the ground before the ball, or I'm going to miss the ground and top it because the club is now on the upward part of the arc. So what we're going to try and do is stay centered on the golf ball to start with. So we've got to rotate in a centered way, and that's what I'm going to explain to you first to get a good understanding of how to stay on the golf ball. So let's get into how to rotate the shoulders in the correct way to control that arc. Now, one thing I see most amateur golfers do is when they get into the posture, as they swing, they actually lift their left shoulder. So what that actually creates is a movement off the golf ball, and that's therefore shifted your arc. So what we're going to try and do is get your shoulders turning square to your spine. Now, if I stood up perfectly straight, imagine the line going straight through my body here. So stood up straight, my shoulders rotate square to that line. Now, the weirdest bit about golf is we tilt to the golf ball. So we're going to tilt over 45 degrees, so therefore your shoulders have still got to turn square to that. So actually your left shoulder's going down towards the ball. So in relation to our arc, if I get my left shoulder going down towards the ball, my body can stay still. And therefore I haven't shifted off the golf ball. The center line of my body is still on the golf ball. So as I unravel that movement into the downswing, it's much easier for me to strike the ball first and then the turf. So instead of actually hitting the ground first, I make solid contact with the golf ball. So now we've understood how the shoulders rotate and the correct way to do that. What we've got to then do is unwind that into the downswing in the correct way. Now, just because your shoulders wind up in the right way and we stay on the ball doesn't necessarily mean you can strike it every time. So if I rotate to the top of my golf swing here in the right way and then just use my arms to come back down, I can still hit the ground before the ball, so the swing bottoms out too early. So we've got to make sure we do is shift that arc forward. So we've got to make sure that we get the ball and the turf, so the low point of the circle is going to actually have shifted forward. So what we've got to try to create is, as I've wound up to the top of the swing, actually I'm going to engage my lower half first. So I want to make sure that my hips start the downswing. So my hips lead my body, and as you can see, the center point of my body we've chatted about is now shifting slightly forward. So therefore it's much easier for me to come down and hit the ball first and then the turf rather than hitting the ground first. So far we've got the centered turn and we've got the hip shift. Now, not all of that is going to guarantee still that you're going to hit the ball first. So what we've got to make sure we do is understand how to hold the golf club on the way down and then therefore release it. So let's recap there. We've got the shoulder down towards the ball. So we have that centered turn. We've got the shift in the hips. Now, once we get the shift into the hips, what we've got to really focus on and concentrate is trying to hold the angle in your arm and club, but then also know how to release it. So we're trying to hold this angle for as long as we can, and then we're trying to then release all of that through impact. So the release of the golf club is actually how fully extended you can get it through after impact. So we're trying to feel like we hold that lag in effect, what it's called, and then release that through the ball. So you start to feel like actually you're not hitting at the ball, we're hitting through the ball. So we hit ball then turf. So we're focusing very much on that shoulder down, very much on the hip shifting, and then very much on the pull and the release of your arms through the shot. Okay, now it's all very well and good having the information, but the important thing is being able to apply it. So what I want to do is give you a drill that you can work on the range and therefore have a visualization to take onto the golf course. So what we're trying to create is the right movement like we've talked about. So we've got our hitting ball, our ball we want to hit. Now what I want you to do is a foot behind the ball, I want you to set up another ball directly in line with that ball. Now the purpose behind this is we're trying to miss this into the downswing. So if I get to the top of my golf swing with that good centered turn, and then I don't shift my hips and I don't keep the angle, all you'll end up doing is what we call casting the golf club, and you'll hit that ball. So we've got to try and shift the hips and hold the angle long enough to miss the back marker ball and therefore hit the proper ball. Now another great thing with this is then take a tee. Now pop that in another foot in front of the ball. Now the tee is going to be your focal point to be able to hit through the shot. So we've got the centered turn, we've got the hip shifting and the pulling down to miss the first ball. We're then going to release through, focusing on the tee in front of us. So I want you to imagine that you're going to try and hit that tee. So I've got the turn to the top, the hip shift to miss the ball, release through and trying to hit the tee in front of me. So I guarantee that I start to hit the ball first. So if I do that at full speed for you, we're trying to focus obviously on the good turn, the shift and pull, and the full release. So naturally, the ball was here, and then I've hit the turf after the shot. So there's quite a lot of information there, so I'll just do a little recap for you. So we've got to focus on the shoulder turn to be able to control the circle of the swing to start with. We've then got to focus on the left hip to be able to shift the circle forward, and then we're extending the arms through the ball to ensure that we're hitting the ball in the turf. So I've got that good turn in terms of my shoulder, turning square to my spine and going down towards the ball. I've then got the shift in the hips and holding the angle to be able to miss the back ball, and then I'm making sure I release fully through the ball with my arms to make sure I hit ball then turf. Now the key thing, let's relate this to driver, because it's obviously going to be slightly different because we don't want to hit ball then turf because the ball's teed up really high. So let me give you an idea of exactly how to do it with driver, because it is slightly different. So we've understood how to strike the irons. Now the key thing is being able to strike the driver as well and understand where the low point of the arc is in relation to hitting the driver. So we talked about with the iron hitting the ball then the turf. So the low point of the circle and the arc is actually slightly in front of the golf ball. Now with the driver we want this to be different because it's teed up high. So what we're actually trying to create is we hit it on the upward part of the arc. So this is one of the reasons why the ball goes further forward in your stance, like we talked about in the last video. So the ball goes just inside your left heel, so it's moved further forward. Now the important thing with this is we still want to keep our turn centered, but it's centered into the middle of the stance. So the easiest way to create this is, as you're setting up to the driver, instead of putting the driver behind the ball, actually put the driver in the middle of your feet. So all your visualization now is then going to go to the driver head. So you're trying to turn centered to where the driver head is here. So if that's your center point, that therefore is in the low point of your arc. So as you're coming into the ball, we're actually hitting on the upward part. Because if I was then to sway on top of this golf ball like we did with the iron, I'd actually hit straight underneath it or top it. It becomes quite hard to create a decent strike to it. So if the driver's placed in the middle there and I do the same centered turn, and then I get the same shifting and pulling we talked about in the irons. Now the key to the swinging through the shot with this, we're trying to extend our arms up rather than down like we talked about with the irons. So the arms are still doing the same thing, the basic concept's still the same thing, we're just ensuring that we're hitting on the upward part of the arc rather than the downward part. So we've got the turn to the top, shift and swing up. So we gave you a drill for the iron, it's important to give you a drill for the driver as well. Now, this drill is going to be similar but have a slight difference to it. Now, when you set up the driver, ideally you're trying to get half the ball above the driver head. Now, what I want you to do for the drill is actually tee it up as high as you possibly can. So ideally you get all the ball above the driver head. Now the purpose behind that is to force you to actually get that feeling of swinging up and extending your arms up through the shot. Now as we did with the irons, I want you to place a ball further back, but this time instead of putting it a foot behind the ball, you're going to put it a foot behind your driver head that you've got in the middle of your stance. So it's actually effectively nearer 2 feet behind the ball there, but the concept's still the same. So we don't want to hit that ball on the way down, we're trying to miss that slightly and extend up through the shot. So if we set up with the driver in the middle, ball teed up nice and high, good turn, and extend through the shot. So that's the end of the Perfect Swing Golf Series. Now, the great thing there, if you work your way through those videos, you've got a great sound grounding to be able to get a good golf swing and a consistent golf swing, but more importantly, understand about the strike. So we started off with the grip. We gave you a good understanding of how to take the grip, but more importantly how to then integrate that into a routine on the golf course. We then talked about the stance, the posture and the alignment, and again more importantly how to relate that into a routine that we've developed. So with that routine, when you work on the golf swing movement that we chatted about today, it can really give you a good understanding of how to take all of that onto the golf course. So hopefully for you guys, you've got something that A is going to benefit you, but more importantly you can replicate on the golf course, because it's okay doing it on the driving range, but we have to have those important routines and develop those important habits to be able to make it consistent on the golf course. So when you're watching the top players in the world, every single one of them has the same routine each time, so it creates a good habit. So best of luck with it. Hope you do well with it. Let us know on Facebook and Twitter how you get on with it, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.
To watch more tips and drills videos that will help improve your game, visit www.directgolftv.com.